Scarborough's Higgins Beach is normally bustling with surfers, tourists, and dog walkers. But in January, a strong storm destroyed roads and flooded homes across the shoreline.
During the storm event, this whole area had a river of water flowing down it that was probably about this deep.
Higgins Beach is just one of the many coastal communities impacted by several major storms this past winter. That's put a spotlight on a major question facing the state. Just how vulnerable is Maine's coast to a warming world, and what steps do we need to take to prepare? That's what we're diving into today. I'm Robbie Feinberg. This is Maine Explained. Pete Slavinsky with the Maine Geological Survey showed me the damage at Higgins Beach about a month after the storm.
This whole area around us was flooded, and it's not unexpected because all of this area is part of a flood zone.
Pete has crowdsourced photos and videos from this winter to help people understand what it means to live in a flood zone. He's compared the footage to the inundation shown on floodplain maps from the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Here's what that map looks like for Higgins Beach. See this area marked in red? That means that when a once-in-100-year storm hits, you could be in the path of dynamic flooding with waves bigger than 3 feet. Farther inland in this green zone, the waves won't be quite as fierce. The water will still flood your street or home, but it won't necessarily sweep you off your feet.
So when we're talking about existing flood conditions, the flood maps that are available for the Maine coastline are probably the best thing that you could depend on right now for looking at existing vulnerability to a 1% or what we call a 100-year storm event.
If you look at these maps for Old Orchard Beach or Wells or Harpswell, you can see just how vulnerable much of coastal Maine is. Using some rough estimates, the state says that around 33,000 Maine structures are at risk of flooding, and about 3/4 of homes and businesses in floodplains aren't insured.
It's really important to understand your existing risk to current events that can happen, or at least be thinking about the fact that these events are going to potentially be exacerbated by the rising sea level that we see.
So will those rising sea levels lead to more damage?
So we know a few things. We know we're getting warmer, both air temperature and water temperature. We know we're getting wetter. We're seeing more precipitation associated with storm events. We know the sea level is rising. We've been measuring it for over 100 years. Those trends are very clear.
But climatologist Susie Arnold says we don't know exactly how that will translate into damage across Maine's coast. We do have some estimates, though. The Maine Climate Council put together a vulnerability report a few years ago, showing the potential for hundreds of millions of dollars of building damage due to coastal flooding and sea level rise. And there's this tool from the Nature Conservancy that estimates how many properties in Maine could be inaccessible due to sea level rise. If you zoom in here to a town like Arousic near Bath, it shows that nearly 300 properties could be inaccessible by 2080 because of inundated roads.
And even now, I mean, I think that, in my hometown of Bath, there are a few areas that we already know of that don't go in that neighborhood at an astronomical high tide because you'll be stuck there for a few hours.
Hundreds of thousands of Mainers reside and make their livings along the water, and some have already seen their lives upended from storms this past winter.
We would guess that 50 to 60% of the infrastructure along the coast of Maine was either lost or severely impacted by these storms. We've had fishermen that have lost docks and wharves and structures that were in their lives for generations.
So the big question is, what now? If you're a homeowner or town official, what can you do to deal with this harsh reality? Pete Slavinsky lays out 5 options moving forward. He breaks it down with an acronym, DAPR, D-A-A-P-R. He says you can do nothing and accept future risks. You can avoid and stop building in flood-prone regions, protect an area with a seawall or a sand dune, and there are 2 other options. Back at Higgins Beach, Slavinsky shows me an example of removing, literally tearing down or moving buildings and other infrastructure. He points to the site of the former Silver Sands Hotel, which was torn down after a fierce storm close to 50 years ago.
It was not relocated, it was simply removed. It's not a very popular option with coastal property owners, but there's already a big interest in at least relocating some infrastructure out of harm's way by taking it, moving it farther back on a lot, elevating it, things like that, voluntarily.
And finally, Slavinsky says people can adapt or redesign our coastal infrastructure to better withstand these storms. He shows me how that can be done by comparing beachfront houses side by side. One home is built on top of a slab foundation, but the others have been intentionally constructed on elevated wooden posts, allowing the waves to flow through.
And the two houses on the right actually are the ones that are built up well above the base flood elevation. You can see how they're elevated. You can actually park below them. And you can see how one sustained damage and the others did not.
Slavinsky says no option is necessarily better than another, but they give coastal communities choices for how to prepare for a warming future. Many coastal towns have already received some funding from Maine state government over the past few years. And more is likely coming, as the legislature just passed $60 million in relief from this winter's storms. One silver lining, the urgency these storms created across Maine's coast to address these issues. More and more coastal areas are now talking about how to prepare for a more extreme future, because sea level rise and climate change aren't slowing down. For now, that's Maine's Coastal Vulnerability Explained. We talked about a lot of different tools and resources and maps in this video, and we have a lot more information to share, including how you can figure out if you're at risk. You can find links to them in the episode description. Like this video if you learned something new about Maine, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for even more from Maine Public. As Maine's official public media organization, we're proud to bring free radio, television, and digital news and entertainment to Mainers every day. Support our work at mainepublic.org/donate.